So today we're going to talk about measures of central tendency and measures of variability. Now that's just a fancy way of saying we're talking about mean, median, mode, and range. And so mean is simply, of course we took notes on this, so mean was simply the average, or we add up all of our numbers and we divide by the number of numbers. Our median is our middle data value. Our mode is our most occurring, and our range is our largest, minus our smallest. And so for number one, I'll go ahead and do that with you guys. So first thing I need to do before I do anything is I need to put them in order from least to greatest. And so my smallest one is 2, then 4, then I have 8, 9, and 9. So I like to count them also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it does match, and so I know I have all my data pieces. I'm good to go. To find my mean, I'm going to add them all up, and then I'm going to divide by the number of numbers. And so we'll go ahead and do that now. And so when I do that, I'm going to get that the sum of them is 32. So I have 32. And then I'm going to divide by the number of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 32 divided by 5. And so that's going to be 6. 6 times 5 is 30. And then when I subtract, I get 2. Create a 0. Bring it down. And then 4 times 5 is 20. And I'll get to go. So then I get 6.4, 6 and 4 tenths. Is my mean, and then my median. So real quick on the mean, I know on the personal information activity I had you go ahead and round to the nearest integer, and that was only to make the fourth part of that activity easier. So we're not doing that going forward. We want to leave our mean rounded usually to the nearest hundredth, sometimes nearest tenth, depending on what I give you for that one. So just because we rounded to the nearest integer of the last activity, that does not mean that we're always going to do that. In this case, we're not rounding at all. We're leaving it at 6 and 4 tenths. Median. So to find my median, I'm simply going to cross off my numbers until I get to the middle. So this median means middle. So first and last, and then the next first, next last. Whenever I get to the middle, I'm going to draw a line. And so my line, my median is on 8, so median is 8. Now, if we have an even number of data values in our set, then, of course, we're going to find the mean or the average of the two middle numbers, just as we did on the last activity. So mode. Mode simply means the one that occurs the most often. So I look, I have 1, 2, 1, 4, 1, 8. And I have 2 9s, and so then my mode is going to be 9. All right, and then the range, and the range is simply the spread of my data for you sports guys, and so it's my largest data value minus the smallest data value, or the difference between my data values. So 9 is my largest, and subtract 2, which is my smallest, so 9 minus 2 is 7, so then my range is 7. So that's all we're going to do. So we have 3 parts, there's 2 more to do. Number 2 and number 3, probably a little bit difficult for what we've been doing, but that's okay. We can still do it. I'll work through it with you. And so the first thing, and it's good information to know, because when you're doing your own grades, trying to figure out what kind of grade you want to get, this is good information for you. So Dana scored 80, 86, 79, and 81 on her first 4 math quizzes. And Mom and Dad said, you know what, Dana, you need to get an 84. Otherwise, if you get less than an 84, then I'm not going to buy you that video game that you want, or provide that reward to you. So you need to get an 84. And so Dana says, okay, great. I need to figure out what score I need to get on my 5th quiz to get that average of 84. And so we need to find an equation. Well, we know that our equation for or our method for finding our mean is simply to add up all the numbers and divide by the number of numbers. So we'll do that. So I have an 80, I have an 86. I'm going to write it without the commas just so I don't have to erase them in a bit. 80, 86, 79, and 81. And there's another quiz, a fifth quiz, quiz number 5. I don't yet know what the grade is, so, and then we'll call that X. And it has to get an average equal to 84. So, good start. And so what do I do with these numbers to find my mean? Well, of course, as we know from before, we added them together. So 80 plus 86 plus 79 plus 81 plus some number equals 84. And then the last step to find my mean is I have to divide by the number of numbers. So I need to divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's my equation. And then to solve my equation, and I'm going to rewrite it again off to the side just so I have room to solve it. So here we go. 80, 86, 79, 81, and some number equals 84. Divide that by 5. And so how do I get rid of that 5 on the bottom? So if we remember when we were solving equations, what we do is we have to multiply. To undo this division, I need to multiply by the reciprocal. And so I'm going to multiply by 5 over 1. If I do that to the left, I have to do that on the right. Multiply by 5 over 1. Well, that's simply just multiplying by 5. So on the left, 5 divided by 5 is 1. So that gets rid of that. And so now I have 84 times 5. And so my 84 times 5 is 420. So I have 420 on, I'm going to write that a little bit lower, just because that 5's in my way. So I have 420 equals, and then I have to sum up all of the others. So I have 80, 86, 79, and 81 plus X. So that's going to give me 326 plus X equals 420. So now this looks like something that we've been dealing with. Real easy. So positive 326, I need to undo that, so it's a negative 326. So subtract 326 from both sides. So 420 minus 326 is going to give me, that's 0 pairs here, X equals 94. So she has to get a 94 on her last quiz in order for mom and dad to provide that reward and get her an average of 84. Number 3, Carrie's Berries sold a mean or an average of 24 quarts of blueberries per day. The store sold 720 quarts during the sample period. How many days are in the sample? So same setup, a little more complex in the solution, but still we can do it. So we know that it was a mean of 24 quarts per day. So when I added it up together, I get 720, and so 720 is adding up all my data pieces. So it's the same thing as if I had added all these here. So I added all those up, I get 720. Divided by the number of days. Well, how many days? We don't know. So X number of days equals 24. And so that would find my mean. So the total, my sum, divided by my number of days is going to give me 24. So got my equation set up. Now I just have to solve it. And so I'm going to move my page just a little. 720 divided by X equals 24. And so this one, it's like I said, it's not as easy to solve. Maybe later on when you've done a whole bunch of this type of thing, you'll start to see some patterns and shortcuts. But for now, or, maybe we can just go ahead and use a pattern or a shortcut now and just use cross products, because I think that's how we'll end up doing it anyway. So I get 24x equals 720. And so now I divide both sides by 24, and then x equals 720 divided by 24, which comes out to 30. And so x equals 30, so that means there was 30 days in that sample period, so probably over a month is where they generated that data. Alright, so the next one, number 4 through 8, deals with a stem and leaf plot. Now, I believe that you guys have already worked with stem and leaf plots. We haven't in our class yet, and we will. We're going to actually do a double stem and leaf plot, but there's just a basic stem and leaf plot. And so going off the assumption that you guys did this in elementary school, which you should have, you'll know, if you remember, your stem is, so I have 2, and then my line, which is this line here, 4 equals 24. So that means my 2 is my tens place, my 4 is my ones place. Right? So that's going to give me 2 in the tens, 4 in the ones, 24. Alright, so there's my key, tells me how to interpret it. So 2 in the tens, 1 in the ones, that's going to be 21, 24. In the next row I would have 3 in the tens, 2 in the ones, that's 32, 35, 37. Next row I have 41, 43, 44, 49, then 56, 56, 58, and then my last row, 61, 61, 61. And so there's my stem and leaf plot. Oh, sorry, I did that off screen a little bit. And so which numbers are in the data sets, which numbers in the data set are in the 30 to 39 interval? So question number 1. So I look in the 30s to 39. So which ones are in 30 to 39? Well, it's 32, 35, and 37. So that would be my answer here. 32, 35, 37. What is the mode of the set? Which one occurs most often? Well, it's in order from least to greatest, although it's not in a line. It's in order from least to greatest, so we should be able to tell that. If you want to rewrite it at the bottom of your paper in order from least to greatest, that might help some of you, or on a different piece of paper. The median of the set, so again, finding the median, I could rewrite it in order from least to greatest, which I might recommend doing, or you could just cross off top and bottom, or first and last, first and last. So the next one, 24, is going to be, so you tend to want to scratch it off here, and then keep going. Well, I mean, you want, some people, they're thinking they're working backwards and doing that. So you have to be real careful the way you do it. So I don't know, I might recommend when you're crossing it off, because you want to start at one end when you're supposed to start at the other end. Just make sure from 56, the next lowest number is 49, and then coming up from the way 37, the next one is 41. So always wanting to make sure that you are doing it that way. So I don't know. Unless you're just really, really comfortable with this, your best bet is to go ahead and rewrite them out in a line, and then it's going to be much, much easier to tell what your median of your data set is. And then the lowest number is real easy. That's your first number, which is 21. And then your highest number, of course, is 61. Find your range, your high minus your low, and you're good to go as far as this section goes. Now, before I turn over the page and move on, it's going to be important to note, and so if you were really paying attention, you saw that this number should have been crossed off instead of this number, and so there's where the example of kind of getting confused as far as which one goes to which one. So there's a mistake here. That one should not be crossed off. 44, in fact, would be my median of my data set. So again, it's real easy to get that confused. So if you missed it, you want to write it out on the bottom of your page or write it out in a line because, again, it's super easy to make that mistake. Next side. So measures of central tendency. We're talking more about the range, which the range is the spread, right? So we're looking at that data spread, and so it says here another way to examine the set of data is to look at how spread out the data is. Oh, that's why it's called that, how spread out it is. Interesting. Range is a measure of spread. The range of a set of numbers is the difference between the greatest and the least. So set A, there's my set of numbers. I put them in order, least to greatest, and then it's the largest minus the smallest, so 64 minus 57, and so my range is 7. And then to find my mean, I add them all up, so I add up each of these numbers. I get 300 divided by 5 because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers. My mean is 60. Alright, and then we did the same thing on this other side. Put them in order from least to greatest, find the range, largest minus smallest, find the mean, and we're good to go. So now we have a table of values, and it says the following table lists test scores for 3 students. Use the table to answer the questions. And so write Corey's scores in order. So we have Corey's scores. We want to write those in order from least to greatest. We want to find the mean, which is adding them together, dividing them by the number of numbers. The median, so crossing off first and last until we get to a middle value. Mode, which one occurs the most often, and range, which are largest minus our smallest. Now going back to mode, real important, couple of things to make note of. It is possible to have more than one mode. So if we have 2 different or 3 different numbers show up equal amount of times, we could have more than one mode. Another thing to note is if all of them show up the same, we do not say that they're all the mode. We cannot have all of the numbers be the mode. Instead, we say that there is no mode. So it's important to notice that if there is no mode, we write no mode. So don't write 0 because that would mean that 0 is the mode, and that's not the case. So the mode would actually be no mode. Hopefully that helps. Down at the bottom, question number 4 says, which student performed most consistently on the test? Explain your answer. So you're going to look and see what you got for your answers and which one is most consistent. And really most consistent, you're going to see which numbers are kind of closest together in value. So your consistency means your numbers are all going to be very similar in value. All right, so hopefully that's enough. I know it's kind of a long video, but wanted to make sure that I gave you enough information to be able to work this out and get this all done.